Okay, I'm in. Okay.
Hang on. Oh, there I am. My sis. Yeah, alrighty. Hang on just a minute. I'll tell you it too. Since, yeah, so I have Scott. All right, let me see if I can get in. Hang on. Share screen. Oh, okay. Huh. Not letting me view. Hang on, don't hang up yet till I can figure out which contracts. Okay. All right, so now let's see. Share. Okay, I think I got it. There we go. All righty. Thank you. Bye. Can everybody see that?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Scott, can you see it? Dahlia, can you see it? Unmute and answer if you can.
Donna, this is Scott. I can see it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Dahlia,
yeah,
can you?
I can see it as well.
Okie dokie. We're going to wait a minute or two here. Zoom is hating me today, so I had to come in a different way. So. Okay. All right, here we go. We got one more. So just a second. We have Teresa or Tamara. Okay. Okay, Tamara. Oh, she's getting her audio on, so let's get that. Okay, there's Tamara. So today we're doing listings, okay? Okay. There you go, Tamara, gotcha. What we're doing is I'm going to show you the checklist of what you have to have and in your listing and those types of things. So the first thing you need to do is always do an E&O, owner encumbrance, from the title company. It's $5. I was on a call last Thursday where the attorney that was talking, it wasn't Damien, it was somebody else. The first thing, because of all the problems that we have within who owns it, who has it, if there's been a divorce, was there a bankruptcy, is it a short sale or was it short sale, on and on and on. You always want to do a $5 E&O from the title. If it's a property that has been in bankruptcy or came out of bankruptcy or something of that nature, you might want to do the full $100 one. But most of the time, the $5 one is absolutely perfect. If you have doubts, give me a call. You always want to do a net sheet. The net sheet you can do on CTME, or you can do it through your title companies. Public records to make sure you know who exactly is on that title and are they the people you're talking to. Your listing agreement, definitions of working relationship, seller advisory, which is the Damien one, not the state. Seller's property disclosure, square foot. Common interest community checklist is if there is an HOA, you have the seller fill it out and you send it to the buyer. It's just some additional information. Any and all extensions, short sale and seller authorization. Short sale addendum is if the house is going into short sale. You can use the new seller authorization is to get information from the HOA on the seller's behalf, or if it's a short sale, it'll be from the lender. And then you have your lead-based paint disclosure sales and lead-based paint obligation if the house was built before January 1st, 1978. MLS printout sheet, source of water, and closing instructions. Source of water, even though it's in your seller's property disclosure, I want a separate document because I don't want anybody ever to state that they didn't know something. And when we had our E&O carrier on, he says that happens to be the greatest source of suits where they don't know where the water comes from. So that's why I have you fill this out. There's no question. They sign it. You're at it, you have no problems. And it has saved several of our agents from being sued because of some other things, but it was brought into the suit. Next, once you put your MLS printout sheet you have it as active. Now, when you get an offer, you put it under contract, take the offer and make it a contract. You print out, you upload your under contract, the contract itself, if it's a counter proposal, copy of the earnest money receipt, any inspection objection resolution. Don't upload this until you've had any of these documents, until you've had your inspection resolution done. You have a lead-based paint if it applies, a lender letter if you've got it. You have your seller's property disclosure, square foot, source of water, closing instructions, all amend, extends, and closing, the post-closing occupancy if there is one, and you put that together at the time of offer. And you go to command and under commission request, fill that out, and you'll be all set to get your check at closing. After the house closes, then you get your documents to the closing portion. And you can ask all your documents to be sent in the form of email. You can upload all the documents, a copy of checks or distributions sheet, and a copy of the MLS sold sheet. And then if you've got any documentation where you've got receipts or something like that, you can put it at the bottom of command in your under contract section. And now this is found if you go to Google in your Gmail, go to the 6 dots on your right, go to Drive, type in the words resource. It'll pop up Resource Park Meadows, and click on that. Then go to contracts class, and all the stuff I'm going over right now is there. The first thing you have is your listing agreement, which you check the box listing agent, your date. You always check 2.1 as a multi-person firm. You always put down the seller's name, legal name. You have the brokerage firm, and your name should be filled in on CTME or DocuSign. Then you put the county the property is located, the legal description, and the address. Please double check both to make sure they're properly done. Ask your seller if you have a property that's somewhere between 2 and say 500, did they get a help when they purchased their property from any affordable housing program? If the answer is no, then you don't check it. If the answer is yes, then you need additional paperwork for that. Then your listing has to have a beginning and ending time on 3.7. Always make that about 6 months. And if the seller balks and say, look, you may get an offer, they may go through an inspection and it falls. We have to get back on the market, find another buyer. It could happen a couple of 3 times. So at this point, you want to make it so you don't have to create any more paperwork. And that way the seller hasn't got an opportunity to back out. On 3.9.2, you will extended or will not from a holiday to the next following day. You can choose whichever you wish on that. 4 is your broker relationship. You go all the way down to 4.3.1.2. You only represent the seller. If a buyer comes in and says, I want to buy this house, if you did an open house on it, then you say, I have to treat you as the customer. I could go to transaction broker, but that's going to be very hard when you have a listing based on the fact that you know a lot of information about that seller. And so you would have to share some of that with the buyer. If you stayed as a seller's agent and treated that buyer as a customer, there's a document, and I'll show you in a minute. And if they want representation, then call one of our agents in the office, say, I got this buyer. I can't represent him because I'm a seller's agent. I like to have a 25% referral fee. So this way you have, you can hang on to that buyer. And if they don't want to buy this house, they might buy something else from you. On 5, you want to be sure you know generally what this states, because this is your uniform codes of duty as a real estate agent. When you check the box, 5.8, you will or will not disclose prospective buyer and cooperating broker. So that means on 5.8, if I have more than one offer, do I have your permission, Mr. Seller, to tell the other agents, listen, we've got 5 offers, or we have 10 offers, or whatever the case may be. And I would suggest you do will. That way you get the highest and best for your seller. When you check your box at the top on 6, that means these are additional seller's agent duties. If you're going to get fired, you're going to get fired on one of these 3 right here. Promote the interest of the seller, seeking price and terms that are set forth for the seller. And 3 is counseling the seller on material benefits and risk of a transaction. So if you get 10 buyers or 10 offers, and so you want to go through them and point out what's the cons, what's the plus. And then you want to make sure that they make, hopefully, the right decision for them. That would be the best. Cash and highest offer is not always the best, because a cash offer can come in, which is great, and you accept it, then they do their inspection, and then they terminate. That happens a lot lately. So be careful and check and verify their funds and make sure you have the right knowledge that for the seller to make a great decision. Compensation, this is where you put your compensation. You can do 7 is something you don't see often, but 6 you do. And anything less than 5.6, you have to get permission from me. You're going to split it with the buyer's agent, a transaction broker, 2.8, 2.8. I don't want you guys working for free. So a 3.8 is not acceptable because you have costs. You've got to get your flyers. You got to get your pictures, you got to put in the MLS. You've got a lockbox that has to be done. You've got fees to the office. You have other things as you go through the process of listing. So don't make this so little that you don't have enough money to cover your expenses. On 7.1.2 is if I'm going to list, I'm going to charge the seller 10%, and I'll get paid at the listing. I'm not in the the leasing business. Most of the time, I've never used this in 38 years. I always put it in, but I've never used it. So the sellers really want to go forth and make sure that they want to sell. Other compensation, you want to put in none at this time. The other side note on this, there is never any NAs in any places in this contract. NAs are not appropriate in these contracts right now, or anytime actually. Then this is on 7.2.3 is your holdover period. You can put 60, 30, 120, whatever you want to put in there, that's fine. Keep a list of who comes in. This paragraph is for somebody that you have shown, and you give a list to the seller. If they're going to list with another broker, then they can pass that list on to another broker. The rest of this is self-explanatory till we get down to 9.11. Yes, I will submit it to more than one MLS system. I will be submitted to proper. All of the information is will here. And then is the seller authorization of electronics other than other marketing methods except the word done here. Then you go down in 9.1.4, yes, you will display the address, and then number 9.1.5 is listing. You will display that on the internet. So those two are always will. Now the property address, how do I get into it? I would suggest strongly, most of you belong to Smedra, get an electric lock box. I think to buy the box is $125 and a membership of $100 a year. Manual is okay in a pinch, but this gives you better control over who comes into the property, and nobody can come into the property after they viewed it. So if you can get an electronic one, that's great. I always put down other instructions, must call the seller for showing time. I don't want the seller to know that somebody's in their house. I want them to know that and make sure that they understand that they have to let the seller know, because if they have kiddos that come from school and they don't want them walking into where somebody actually is there, and we don't want them to be surprised at the somebody being in their house. So it's always nice. Now I see this one, I forgot to check this box on 9.22. Yes, you always check active real estate broker. You also check licensed appraiser. Those are the only two you want to check. You don't want an unlicensed person coming into the house. So here's how this usually goes. The selling agent calls you and said, listen, my buyer's going to go in with the inspector and I'm not going to be there. And so your answer will be, no, that's not appropriate. The seller wants only licensed brokers to enter the property. Who's never not on mute. Okay, there you go. So you want to be sure a licensed appraiser can go in because they're bonded or they're just licensed like we are, and a real estate broker. Unless they call and tell you and you ask the seller for permission for unlicensed inspectors to go in there by yourself. So you have to be sure you stand your ground. No, the seller, you have to show up for this inspection. You have a lot of lazy agents. As time goes on, you will understand. They don't want to take responsibility. They're too lazy to show up for their own inspections. And it's really crazy. So you take your stand of, no, the sellers want licensed people there. So they make people get cranky at you, but stand your ground. Then on 9.3.1, you want to be sure to put all professional marketing services offered by the brokerage firm as broker deems necessary. The reason you want to put this statement in here is to be sure that if you have a condo that's only 900 square feet, you're not going to take as many pictures as a 4,000 square foot house, or you might put them in different places. But you want to have that ability to say, I'm only doing these many pictures versus this many pictures, or something of that, whatever you're choosing. I'm not doing an aerial or anything like that. So 9.3.2, you have to ask them, is there any area in the house that you don't want to have videoed? Because most of our properties are videoed and are online. So if there's a child's room or some other area they don't want taken pictures of, then you're going to have to instruct the company who's taking your pictures not to take any in that child's room or whatever room they designated, okay? 9 is self-explanatory. Now we get down to 10. On 10.3, you know existing listing agreement is no, there is not at the time of listing, and has not received a submitted prospect to the former agent didn't submit to the seller a list of people that had come into the property. 10 all the way 10.4 and 10.5 are pretty self-explanatory. 11.1 is what price are you going to put on the property? On 11.2, you have to be sure to understand what's the ceiling for FHA and what's the ceiling for VA. You can't check those boxes if this house doesn't fall into one of those categories. I know that VA and FHA up their limit, but I don't remember what they were. You can call Patrick or whatever lender you're dealing with. 11.3 are discount points. Now, in the way the market is right now, discount points are not being paid. So put the word none at this time, because you can't make a decision. You don't have an offer. So 11.4 is on an FHA and VA loan. They're called non-allowable costs to a buyer. It's not allowed to pay. So who's going to pay them? So then you want to say our ceiling is 350 or 300 or 250 or whatever you want. And the seller shall decide at the time of offer if any seller concessions are to be given. So in other words, I receive an offer and on 4.2, somebody asked me for $1,000. You have to decide what's that fee and how does that play into your the seller's bottom line. Then 11.5, you have to decide on what kind of earnest money check do you want. It won't be, it can be a personal check, and on a 350, it can be 3,000 to 5,000, which whatever you guys agree upon. How does the seller want their funds? They want it wired electronically, or do they want a cashier's check? Most funds are being wired electronically. With that said, no seller you need to have the seller verify if an email comes from a title company, make sure your sellers call the title company and say, hey, did you send me an email with wiring instructions? Usually it's encrypted. If it's not, then it's a fraud. We have huge amount of frauds in this area. So be very, very cautious and very, very careful, and make sure you impress upon your sellers. Don't take any email at face value from a title company. Always verify it and make sure if I sent it, because a lot of times it'll come from the agent, that I sent it. We don't want to cause somebody's money to disappear into the pit. 11.7 is the FERPA, which is the Foreign National Act. And the question you want to ask your seller is, are you a US citizen? And if the answer is no, then there's additional paperwork the title company has to get from the seller. And if the answer is yes, you just move on. On 11.8, you have Colorado withholding that could or could not. It may be held out at closing. It's usually 2% of the sales price. So this could be taken out also depending if this is a snowbird house or not. And we talk about deposits. Now 13 is what's included. This has changed. So you make sure you put down the number of remotes that you need, and you check, is there any leased items? If they're leased, what is it? Check the appropriate box. Then the rest of this is pretty self-explanatory. We get down to 13.1.3. You have liens and encumbrance. That brand new stainless steel refrigerator needs to be paid off, or they might come and lien the property. So you ask your seller, is that paid off? Great, put the word done in here. Then on 13.1.4, what is staying in the property? So what's staying is that shiny stainless steel refrigerator in the kitchen, a freestanding whatever stove, a microwave on the counter, the ice maker in the bar in the basement. I mean, whatever is staying. You also must press upon the seller under inclusion if they have rods and curtains. The curtains can be excluded. The rods are screwed into the wall and they cannot be excluded. So if they take them down, make sure there's a note on the curtains. The curtains and the rods go. Our biggest issue lately have been TV mounts. All my TVs, with one exception, are mounted to the wall. All right. So what you have to do is, if there's a TV and a mount and it's mounted on a mount, you've got to make sure, is that mount and TV going to stay? If the TV's going, fine. But the mount can't go because you'll leave big, huge holes in the wall. So if they don't want it, then they need to take it down before they put the house on the market, okay? And so now there's no lease. Oh, there might be, but if there isn't a lease, you put the word none. Now we go down to 13.3, exclusions. Again, be specific. Is it a washer dryer located in the laundry room, or is it a washer dryer located in the basement or on the main floor or wherever, upstairs, downstairs, whatever it is? Be specific, because very large houses could have 2 washers and dryers. So which one's staying, which one's going? So trade fixtures, you put the word none in both places. Then parking space. I understand on 13.4, I'm looking at a house that has a 3-car garage. Not a problem. I also understand if I'm looking at a condo or a townhome, the question to ask the seller is, do you have reserved parking? Do you have a parking garage? What number it is? Is it? Do you have any storage facilities? Is it a storage bin? Is it a storage closet? Is it, you know, a shed in the backyard? Whatever it is, put it down. I know a house, this is pretty self-explanatory, but when you get to a condo or a townhome, it's questions that have to be asked. One of our agents years ago, and when they purchased a short sale, the bank forgot to deed the 2-car garage across from it to go with the property. When he went to sell it, he didn't even own the 2-car garage that he was using all those years. So they had to go through a lot of humps and hoops to get from point A to point B to get that attached to the townhome. So you always want to ask that question. Deeded water, normally it's no, unless you're going to be in acreage, and that's probably no anyway. Water rights usually are no, but double check, ask the seller. Well permit, there's a number. All wells, with rare exceptions, are recorded with the State Water Board, and there's a number that goes with. They can also tell you what aquifer their water comes out of. If you have water stocks, which again is very rare, crops again, very rare. So just ask the questions. If it's no, that's fine, put the word none. If it's a subdivision or whatever, you know it's going to be none, just to let you know. Then go down to 14.3, you're going to convey this property only as a special warranty deed to warrant only the time that the seller has owned this property. With that said, once in a great while, you'll have it where it's a personal representative deed. Normally, in an estate, one of the family members is a personal representative or the court has appointed it. But most of the time it's going to be special warranty deed. If you have questions, give me a call. 14.4 is what is encumbranced against this property. So you have a first in the approximate amount of $200,000 to Wells Fargo. You may read when you do your realist, it'll say at the bottom of the 3rd page where the deeds are. Is there a first and a second? Is there a first and a HELOC? What is it? If there's a HELOC on it, how much have they used on it? You want to put that all in there so you understand when you fill out your seller's property disclosure, you have the proper amount that's against that property. Is there any tenants in that property? Make sure you know that. Or if there is, if the word is, most of the time it's going to be none, but every once in a while you're selling an investment property and a tenant could be in there. Tenant needs 30 days closing, a 30-day notice to vacate the premises. 16 is your association assessments. Okay, what do we have on a monthly fee? What is it, monthly, quarter, yearly? And is there any other special assessments against the property? If it's none, however, when you put the property and 3 weeks later, seller gets a notice of a special assessment, that has to be disclosed to the buyer, guys. You cannot hide that. So then on 17, You wait until possession is upon mutual agreement, because we don't have a contract. We don't know when the seller really wants to vacate the premise. We also want to ask the question when you get to this paragraph, are they going to need a post-closing occupancy to stay in the property 1 day, 30 days, 60 days? Make sure you ask that question. So when an offer comes in, if it doesn't come with a post-closing occupancy, although you need to put that in the MLS, they need a post-closing occupancy. You need to have the post-closing occupancy negotiated when an offer comes in. So now we have material facts and disclosures. You will get a seller's property disclosure. Even if the property is a rental, the seller knows what happens or what comes in. I just talked to Teresa earlier today about something that the sellers didn't disclose. She wrote back and said, hey, you got to put that in this seller's property disclosure. So the bottom line is they have to disclose. Just because it was a rental, they can't stand on the fact that, I don't know. Well, yes, they do. If they replaced a hot water tank or the shingles on the roof, or something was painted or whatever the maintenance on it was, they know. So if the house is lead-based paint, we have to fill out a lead-based paint disclosure. We don't, on 18.2.3, a carbon monoxide alarm has to be in the property at the time of offer, and they have to be 15 feet away from entrance of each bedroom. And this must be on the property when the property is listed, guys. It's better because if the property is FHA or VA and the appraisers go in and they see there's no carbon monoxide detectors, they will stop the appraisal and they will not continue it. And then there's another fee to the buyer to go out and start the appraisal all over again, which I think is $150. So that's a lot. So the property, get the best condition you can get on the property. Seller has a right to cancel, but the broker has a right to cancel. Before you cancel a listing agreement, you have to talk to me, okay? If there's a forfeit of earnest money on 20, how does it go? I always give it all back to the seller, but you can divide it 50-50. I don't really care. So 21 through 28 is pretty self-explanatory. 18, the only thing I put in 18 is like the TC information. She's going to handle all the paperwork and who's going to pay for it, okay? Or if there is a personal representative person, the personal representative will be signing at closing plus the TC information. On 29, you put down what attaches to this listing agreement: the seller's property disclosure, square foot disclosure, the seller's advisory, common interest community checklist for the brokerage firm, the closing instructions, the seller's proceeds sheet, lead-based paint obligation, and sales if it applies, okay? And this one that's in parentheses, don't put that on your contract, only that if those documents apply. So 30 all the way down to 36 is pretty self-explanatory. Then the seller sign, and your signature should already be there through CTME and DocuSign. So any questions so far?
Donna, I do. I have a question.
Sure.
On some of the listings that I've been seeing that I was searching for my buyers, I see a lot of mold disclosures in there. Do we need
We don't have one.
Okay.
Caldwell Banker has one, and some of the RE/MAX offices have them. We don't have one.
And then
anybody else got it?
You
got another one?
I do.
Sure.
I'm seeing a lot of stuff still for COVID where they're still asking for masks and COVID buyer advisories. Are we still putting all our COVID stuff in there and including that?
You don't have to. It's good business practice. If you're a listing agent, just to be cautious. It's up to what the seller wants to do.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I had a question.
Sure.
I'm helping my sister-in-law find a home, and I noticed on some of the listings that they're looking at, when the agent lists it, they attach like the covenants, their closing instructions, if they're different from, the standard DORA plat map, seller's property disclosure. Is that pretty standard?
Well, it depends if the property is rural or if it's a big piece of property, they could be. It depends. When you put them up on the computer, it's for information for your buyers, for the buyers. So they're trying to make sure the buyer understands what the property is. So some people do, some people don't.
Is it good practice to do that?
It would be like covenants and things like that. I would not put up there. I would have the title company send that with the title work and tax certificate. But if there is a plat, I do that. Your seller's property, just any of your disclosures, I would upload all the disclosures that are going to use. Yeah, and that way they can click on it and sign it and call it a day.
What about like a lead paint disclosure if it was like an older home?
Yeah, you put that too. Lead-based paint, not the obligation, because that's only the seller, but the sales one, absolutely. Yeah.
What if it's a property that has like a well and a septic? Are there any documents that you would post with the?
You can post. You can put the just in your general comments to the agent. You can put the well permit number.
Okay.
And then I'll show you a document at the end you can send after you have an offer that's turned to a contract. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Anybody else have a question? Okay, our next document that goes with this listing agreement is your definitions of working relationship, or it can be the buyer brokerage relationship. Either document will be fine. If you have a person who's going to be a customer, this is what you want to do. Make sure you underline here that this is I treat you as a customer, and then have everybody sign. This is the document from Damien. It's 4 pages long, and I need you to use this one and not the state form. So it tells about loan fraud. It talks about solar panels. Let me talk about solar panels a bit. Solar panels are great, but they're a pain in the neck when you go to sell. Because if you have solar panels on your property, you have to be sure you can get information on this solar panel. Is it leased? Is it owned? How does a buyer qualify to take over anything? Because sellers are probably going to end up paying it off, but buyers don't want it, and sellers want buyers to pay for it. So it becomes a hassle. So gather as much information about solar panels as you can. Damien talks about wire fraud, home equity, home home warranties, those kinds of things, home insurance, those kinds of things. Get this done. Now, the first 3 emails that you send to a seller are this: your listing agreement, your definitions of working relationship, and your seller advisory. That's the first email you send to sellers. The reason you do that is you can't overwhelm them with all the stuff that they have to sign. The first one is, I'm going to list it. Here's your information. And this is the first email. Your second email, and when we get to it, will be your seller's proceed sheet. That could be a separate email. Make sure they sign, and I'll show you in a minute. Get that. Your third email is going to be disclosures, and you explain to your sellers exactly which email is coming and how soon do we need to get these things signed, okay? So now we have your disclosures. You have a seller's property disclosure. Make sure they fill it out, not you. You can help them if they have a question. So you fill this out. That's your first disclosure. Your second disclosure is square foot. You get your square foot information from Realist, and you can put it if there's a basement. If there's no basement, you can leave it blank. If you get whatever is said in Realist, and then you put the date of which your contract is written. It's already got your signature on it, needs the seller's. When the buyers come in, there's a buyer page in here too, or signature. You have your source of water, you fill that out. If it's a well permit, you put the number in here. If it's like here where I am, it's Highlands Ranch, You put that, and you put all the information that you see as much as you can. Water is very important to people who come from water drought areas like ours, Arizona, Southern California, Texas. Very expensive, guys, very, very expensive. And so now we have closing instructions. 16, you don't fill out the date because we don't have a contract yet. You want to put out rest of the information as you see it here. And you want to ask the closing company, what's your fee? Is it $250? Is it $300? Is it $500? Whatever the number is, you stick it here. That normally in a buy-sell contract is split 50-50, just so you know. How is the seller going to get their proceeds? Check, cashier's check or electronic wiring, whatever it is, check a box. I didn't, but you do. We talked about additional provision doesn't usually have too much in it. Unless somebody's going to sign for somebody, you need a power of attorney, or you have a personal representative who's going to sign for the state. You can put that in here, but other than that, you don't need a lot of garbage in there. Then we go down here to everybody signs, buyer, seller, title company is to sign. When you go to closing, you do not sign the title company's closing instructions. 2 days before closing, you call the title company and say, hey, have you got the fully executed closing instructions? We will not be signing your closing instructions, okay? So that way you don't have a fight at the closing table. But this is what you have to do. Here's your lead-based paint obligations for the seller to sign, read and sign. This is your lead-based paint sales. Seller fills out the first part. Most of the time they don't know anything. Buyers fill out the second part here. And all parties sign. It's $18,000 fine if you do not sign. And do it quickly. When you write an offer, you only want 1 or 2 days, maybe 3 max, till you get this back to the listing agent. As a listing agent, make sure you check your dates on the contract, because a lot of agents want to stick it out just before closing. You tighten that date up on your buy-sell contract. Here is an example of a seller's estimated net sheet. You can do this online. You can do it in CTM if you know what all the numbers might be, but check with the title company you're working with. They can show you. There's an app. You can do it very quickly, or they can do it for you. It doesn't make any difference. So these are an example of everything. Now, this is the Common Interest Community Checklist document. With that said, seller fills this out. It's informational only for the buyer. Then once it's filled out, once you have a contract, an offer that becomes a contract, then send this to them in the form of, here's some additional information, Mr. Selling Agent, for your buyers. Fill out, if there's more than one HOA, fill that out. Now, if for some reason they don't like this, and I thought we uploaded the new ones, but look for the notice to terminate. I'm terminating on inspection or appraisal. New loan is not in this this is an old one and I don't know what happened, but we'll have to check on that. But new loan review that's taken out now. So you can have other things that you can, usually it's going to be on inspection. I thought Amy uploaded it, but I think she did not. So anyway, this is something you look for the new notice to terminate document, and you get buyers to sign who's terminating, okay? Now you have the earnest money release. All parties have to sign this or you don't get the earnest money back. So, and you got to watch those dates, because if your notice, if your loan availability date comes up and you're not going to make it, and the buyers won't do an amend extend, there's a new document called amend extend / notice to terminate. That's what you want to send over, and your earnest money release. And if you get to that point, call me and I'll tell you which ones to use. And then we have title objection. This is, hey, there's something in the title, off records, whatever it is. We are talking about anything that's attached to the title. It could be a lien, an IRS lien, whatever. You want notice of objection on your before your date is done, so that you can get it cleared up and make sure that you get everything accomplished so you can go forth with the deal. Next thing is appraisal. So if it doesn't appraise, you want to send over the document. And I would suggest strongly that you put your attached appraisal so that the other side can see what it is and that it's you're not playing games. So you want to resolve this by your dates, or you withdraw it and continue on. You have to negotiate and give yourselves a couple of days to do that. This is a buyer acknowledgement document. Hang on just a minute. This is a buyer's acknowledgement document that is, buyer's not going to have an inspection, buyer's not going to purchase a home warranty, and have the buyer sign this, because this, well, if they don't get an inspection, it can come back to haunt you. So you always want a buyer to sign this if you're a listing agent, or even if you're a selling agent, to say, hey, we don't want to do that anymore. If you have a property that has a septic tank, it has to have a septic use permit, except in Morgan County. And I believe it's called something else, but it's similar to a septic use permit. And when you write your offer, you have to put down a date for septic use permit in the blank portions of dates to say, one, when is it going to be done? And somewhere in additional provisions that the buyer, that the seller is going to pay for it. Make sure you're specific on who's going to pay for that permit. Okay. E&O insurance, your deductible. This is if you're selling your personal property. You have to have a seller's property disclosure, home warranty. Buyers have to do an inspection, and you have to do Colorado State approved forms. You have to do that in order to keep your E&O insurance intact. Your deductible, if you are sued and your E&O is intact on your personal property, it's a $2,500 deductible. E&O insurance has gone up dramatically. Good news is the prices in Colorado have gone up. Bad news is that with the prices going up, there are more claims. So we raised it $25 in the office to cover this enormous amount of, it went up about 47% or 48%, something like that. So it's a really big number now. So again, to keep your personal property intact, you've got to have those four things: seller's property disclosure, home warranty, home inspection, and use Colorado State approved forms. Always have everything in writing. Save all your emails if you can to make sure you're covered, okay? Now, Tamara, in answer to your question, this is a little checklist for wells. It's in there. You can have the sellers fill this out just for informational or not. It's up to what they want to do, you know, what you want to do, but it just helps a buyer understand. A lot of buyers that buy property and it has well and it has a septic don't understand what the process says. There is, they have pumps per minute and the flow has to be a certain level, or your valve has to be replaced. So all of these pieces of information, if the seller knows, that would be helpful.
Is that something that you can attach to your MLS listing, or is it confidential?
Sure, it's in our documents. You'll find it under, I think it's under Damien's documents at the bottom of CTME. I think that's where it is. I can't quite remember. I think it is. Anybody got a question on anything that I've covered today? So your first email, just to go over, is going to be your listing agreement, definition of working relationships, and your seller advisory. Your second email will be your seller's property, your seller's estimated net sheet. You do want to get your sellers to sign that. And the third email is all your disclosures, including closing instructions, okay? And as you go through, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to call. Anybody else got a question? Okie dokie. Well, you guys have a great day. Next week, we will be going over the buy sell. I think it's next week. Yes. I have to double check. Check the calendar on that one, guys, because there is a couple of times that I'm not going to be able to it. Let me double check here for you. Yep, next week's buy sell. So go ahead and come on in on that. And then the following week will be dates and deadlines. If anybody has questions, give me a call. Otherwise,
hey, Donna.
Yes.
Sorry, I just thought of a question when you said that. So next week it's the buy sell contract. And yes. I believe that's the one like when you have a buyer and you're trying to help them find a home. And there was a bunch of new stuff on there. So are you going to cover that? Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. I will talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for your time. Thank you,
Donna.
And call if you need me. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Yep. You're welcome.